evening. Just warming up my car. I'm just going to drive out a little bit, and I do need to get something to eat. But I want to eat something. Mm, Looking to see if they have anything healthy. I got to get back onto my healthy food diet. Ooh, I'm cold. 28 degrees here right now. I wanted to say Happy New Year. We really didn't have a 2025, really. It just kind of skipped. But I have a lot to be thankful for. A lot to be thankful for over this past year. You know, of course, I had a sad moment where I lost someone that I was cool with. That was my friend, recently, and um, God rest their soul. But um, it doesn't. It's just everything's just happening so fast. Very very fast. I have a lot of blessings this year. I mentioned about the kidney surgery and things working out for me, my mom, and the other recipients. Doctor and his boss retired. Yep. And so, yesterday was my last day. It was very hectic. I'll tell you right now, trying to get everything together and telling the patients, the goodbyes. It was hard. It was very hard having to do that. Me and my coworker Jen, we actually stayed later than what we were supposed to clean up house, clean up the office. All the charts and everything has been moved to another hospital, and it was just a lot. It was a big process, and I was overwhelmed, honestly. Very overwhelmed, and just I was like, oh my gosh, it's never ending, because we had to get back to calls. We had to make sure that people had enough prescriptions until they see a new specialist, GI doctor. It's hard to sometimes get in with a specialist. They're talking about 6 months for the hospital. So it was a lot yesterday, trying to do all of that, and then trying to file for unemployment, because yesterday was my last day, and I helped my coworker out, and it was a lot. So by the time I came home trying to get everything together, I was just exhausted. Honestly, I didn't fall asleep. I just missed the ball drop because my mind was other things. It's funny because the new year just doesn't end. My job, I only have my second side job. That's it right now, and I'm trying to go for like unemployment until I find a new job. Next week, supposedly, I'm supposed to be meeting up with, another facility and looking at their place. And if I feel like it's the place for me, they'll interview me, and if they pay decent and the hours okay, I'll go. Supposedly they don't have weekends, so that's a good thing. They don't work weekends, so that's a plus right there. But I'm getting older, so I want to make sure there's benefits and all that other stuff involved in the job. But I'm not in a rush for anything right now. But yeah, just I got home. I missed the ball drop. I didn't even look at the ball drop. I just honestly, I want to just take a shower, wash my hair. I didn't get a chance to do it just yet. I just pushed it back. I'm going to do it later on tonight. And then the weekend will get pretty interesting because I'm going to be with my family for the weekend. And, see my little niece tomorrow. Yeah, I don't know what it was this year. I didn't feel like really having anything. At first I was thinking about having a stream, a chat room and everything like that, but I'm not in the mood to really talk to people right now. I'm just kind of in the mood to drive, listen to music, get my thoughts out and different things about life out. But yeah, this year, it was like a roller coaster. It was a big roller coaster, ups and downs, up and down, up and down. Oh boy. I don't know how this year 2026 is going to be, but we'll see. What was it yesterday while I was showering, doing my hair? Let's see if this car is warm. Let's see if the air is coming out warm here. So I'm actually going to go to a couple of facilities, shops, before they close, because I want to get my little nephew, the youngest one, something. I see him over the weekend. Yeah, it still feels like the air is coming out like chilly. Okay, now it's starting to feel a little lukewarm. Okay. um, you know, I don't know what this year is going to bring, but I'm seeing a lot of videos of people going homeless. Like things have gone up drastically. Cost of living, cost of. I mean, I wouldn't say gas. I think gas is stable, at least from where I'm at. But food prices. They showed a video where a lady came with like a camera. She was looking at the vegetables. It was like salad, like lettuce, and she went buy it. And she says $20. This can't be $20 for a salad head, like a lettuce head. She's like, this doesn't make any sense. And it really was. So when she put it up towards the lettuce, it says for a lettuce head, like when you get the stalk, it was $20. She said, this is ridiculous. And people are complaining. There's a lot of people living in hotels. A lot of people that are like 50, 60, 70 years old saying, I've worked for a company over 35 years. I got let go and I'm homeless, or I don't have a job now. And you're like, wow, it's like, and they're even saying it, people that are older. It's not just people that are younger or people my age. It's people older. They're saying I've worked, this is the hardest I've worked ever in my life. I feel like, it doesn't matter how much I make anymore. It's just not enough. It's like, I think things are rougher now than it was 20 plus 30 years ago. And a lot of people can say, no, the 70s was rough. I'm sure it was. But the difference was, like I said before, is that, it only took one person to really meet all the ends of finances, even if you were broke afterwards. Now it's two people doing two jobs, and it's still not enough. And one lady on the one video, I started laughing because she thinks the way I do. She's like, I'm still not making enough money. I make this much a year and it's still not enough, and I'm still broke. I mean, I'm not broke, thank goodness, right now at least. I'm doing pretty okay. But, I'm very thankful. But there's a lot of people, that's making a lot more than I am. But because their finances and expenses are higher than mine, they go broke so quickly. Now, people say, sorry about that. Every time I drive down this block, for some reason, my Wi-Fi gets interrupted. It always happens, and it skips over. So back to what I was saying. Before I put some music on and stuff. Fix this camera. People say, well, they need to stop living out of their means. Yeah, that could be for some people. Most people are right now the problem's not them living out of their means. There are some people, that they are probably spending extra money on nails, their hair salons. I don't do any of those things. So yeah, I agree with that. But however, the whole point is that, it's a shame that people work hard and they work double jobs, and yet they still don't have enough money to do those things. And then, on top of that, even if they didn't do those things, the way the cost of living is now, it doesn't even matter anymore. More than half of the people in this country, I could even say more than 75% are struggling. They have like less than $25 in their pocket after they're done paying everything. And again, if they were to move somewhere, they wouldn't find anything cheaper because we're like, if we were to move, they will end up probably being double broke too, and be like, oh darn, I can't afford this. Where I live at, again, I got this apartment back almost 14 years ago, because this upcoming May, me and hubby, it'll be 14 years since we've been, married. When we first moved in this apartment, I mentioned this the rent was like less than $650. It was like it was cheap. And I mean, I wasn't even making any money. You're talking about I was working full time. I was not even making $11 an hour then. And I wasn't in the medical field then either. And my husband only worked a part-time job, and we still made it. And of course, I had one car at the time. Hubby didn't have a car yet when we first got married. Yeah, but still, I mean, we were making it. Now, 14 years later, well, because we are still in the older apartment, we never got an upgrade or nothing like that. They never really put up our rent so bad. They never put it up too much, and it's not an upgraded apartment. You know, it's like I mentioned this before. If you go in there, it feels like very 80s and 90s feel, which I don't mind. I like the 80s and 90s feel. You know, it doesn't. You feel like you're going back in the days a little bit. You walk in my apartment. The only thing that seems modern is the stuff my husband has in there. But like the whole layout of the apartment and certain things just looks quite, it looks old. Not like updated per se. But yeah, so, if we were to move or we were to go to an updated apartment, guess what would happen? That rent's going up skyrocket. And yet where we live is actually 75% military that live in my apartment complex because we live near the base, not far from there. And it's still the cheapest rent you're going to probably find, one of them, very few, that you'll find here in Jersey. Because I don't know if it's because the military live there, most of them. I don't know the reason for that. The apartments are pretty good shape. They're really good. They do maintenance work. They do inspections. I'm not saying my complex is but is one of the few you're going to find that's pretty reasonable. But if I was to move out what I have now and move into a upgraded apartment, or let's say I went to a 2-bedroom, I would definitely be having some issues because they raised it up highly from what I'm paying right now. So I'm like, ooh, that'd be like maybe an extra $400 I have to pay out of my pocket. And if it's 2 bedrooms, forget it, you're probably paying like $1,600, which is still not bad versus what you're seeing now today with these apartments. They're like surpassing $2,000. I mean, some people I heard are paying like $2,800 for a rent for just a tiny 2-bedroom apartment. It's not even a house, it's not a mortgage, and it's bad. And if you bought a house when things, or like let's say you had an apartment and you were making decent money to live there, and now they raised up everything, it depends. A lot of people are having it rough. I'm just thankful that where I'm at, they didn't raise it up bad. And I think, like I said, before, I think it's because it's an older model, and a lot of people have told me that. They said I think that's the reason why they never raised it up so high like that. But if they were to sit there and do all this work on your apartment, and you were to move into another part of that apartment, you'll be feeling the burn financially again, I'm sure. I won't be able to save as much, and I'll be like, darn, I really cannot do anything unless I work 3 jobs continuously. And I'm not doing that. I'm not working 3 jobs and burning myself out. And that's where people are at right now. People are just tired. They're like, everything is work, 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 and there's not enough time for family or home or anything. So shoot, I know people that literally, like, I looked online and see a lot of people are literally quitting their jobs because they're just tired. They're like, they're burnt out. And they're like, I don't even care at this point what happens next. And they're living in their car, and they have a camera sitting there, and you're like, wow, they must have had it, and they're like, I'm just tired. I'm just living in my car now. I'm just tired of thinking and dealing with everything. And they just leave their jobs and walk out. I'm like, wow. That means they must have really must have been taking a mental toll for them to all be doing this. I mean, for you to literally leave your job and just be like, I'm done. I'm just going to live in a car. I'm tired of everything. I'm tired of working hard. I don't even care to live in a place anymore. I just don't. I'm tired of it. That person has probably just gotten to their boiling point and fed up. Like, they're just, enough is enough. Like, I just feel like my whole life is working and it's not enough. I'm also seeing too, and this has been a big thing I've been seeing from across a lot of social medias, and what I've been hearing is that a lot of people that are like 50 plus years old, they're saying that they're getting laid off after 30-something years being on a company, good reputation, being on work on time, everything, and now all of a sudden just getting laid off without reason. And it's like, what? And I'm like, is that true? And then I'm seeing more and more people saying that, like, not people my age, people that are older, like 50 plus and older. And I think the reason they're doing that is because of this, because of money. They want to get a young person in that's going to do the job and do a lot more for less. They know that person that's 50, 60 years old, been working their ass off for these years. And, you know, an older person is not going to get taken advantage of as easily as a young person is. So they know that. So they're like, okay, well, you know, she's old. She knows the ins and outs of this job. You know, she knows how much staff we used to have at one point. She's not going to be as easygoing. She's more set in her ways. She makes more money. She's going to expect more. Let me get her out of here. And then, you know, they leave that person out in the cold. Like, you know, she's like, I've been loyal to this job for I don't know how long. And now they get rid of me. And I've seen this more and more and more and more with people that are older population. And they were like, I feel like I have to start all over again. But yeah, I think that's exactly what it is. I know that even where I worked at, which my boss retired now finally, they started off with a staff of like 6-7 people. When me and my coworker Jen came in, all of a sudden we went down to 4. And then we were doing extra the amount of work. We were young when we got in. And I know that somebody one time says, well, you know, you girls are doing all this work. You guys are doing like an 8 to 10 man job. Guess what? We were here. We had a position for everyone. We had like 7 people here. I said, what? Really? I said, yeah. Now we're like down. Like there was a time, remember I mentioned that, you know, it was only 3 of us running the whole game show because there was another person that just kept taking off vacations for several months upon end. And taking off so much timing. And I don't know why they got away with it so much, but they did. So we were sitting there, we just kept, you know, doing all of this by ourselves. But they were like telling me like, no, before you guys came here, we had like 7 people, and the people that were there before us were older people. And I'm thinking about it now, and I see these videos. I'm like, it does make sense about like companies in general. You know, they're probably thinking this person's older, they're making more money. Let me hire someone new, somebody who don't have as much experience, and put more work onto them once they start gaining experience and doing a lot more, getting a lot more work out of them. So, you know, that's something I've just been like just watching a lot lately. You know, I'm just somebody who likes to look into a lot of realistic things. I'm not saying I don't watch funny stuff and entertainment stuff, but a lot of times I watch stuff that's going on around the world, different people and their opinions and perspectives of what's going on right now. Like, you know, sometimes it's good to hear people out too, because, you know, like, okay, it's not just me feeling this way about what's going on in our current society. There's a lot of people feeling this way, because there's a lot of people that seem to be, how do I put this? They seem to be almost like in denial of what state we are right now. Like, oh, just work harder and you'll do better. Well, people are starting to realize that that's not always the case. That's a big lie. Sometimes you can work your ass off and it still ain't enough. Sometimes you can work your ass off, and I can tell you most of the time you can work your ass off and you're underappreciated. Or you can work your ass off and do a good job, and they'll sit back and they'll applaud you and tell you good things about yourself. Oh, you're employee of the month. You did everything right. But the moment you slip up or do one thing, they'll make you look like the worst employee in the world. This is what else I heard too. That I've been hearing a lot, surfacing the internet a lot from different people, is that they said stop telling people when you're going to stop telling people when you're going to put your 2 weeks notice in. And I'm like, why are people saying that? So someone explained it, and they said never tell somebody. They say stop telling people when you're going to put your 2 weeks notice in. Just when you get the job, get closer to the day you're going to leave, and let them know. And they said the reason why you do that is because now they're starting to do something where you get a job. You say, okay, I'm putting my 2 weeks notice in, and they'll just go ahead and fire you or get rid of you before 2 weeks is up, out of spite. And I'm hearing this from a lot of people now. Like, they'll put your 2 weeks notice in, and if you got a really mean, not very nice supervisor or boss that's over you, they'll do something out of spite like that. So there was a man, and I was watching. It was like a collage of videos with different people, and it was a white man, and he was older looking. He looked to be like in the 60s, and he was stating that he worked for this. I don't know if it was a truck company for like years, 30 plus years. And he said that he left his equipment there because what happened was he found another job that's going to do better for him. And he says, look, I'm going to have to go. I'm putting my 2 weeks notice in. They sat back and said, we don't need you. Don't come in. So he was asking for severance. I think it's called severance pay. And they wouldn't give it to him. They were like, he didn't get anything. So he was behind. He's like, thankfully I have some money saved up, but I'm going 3 weeks now without pay now because I'm not starting the job till this day. And, I got two more weeks before I have to go here. So I don't have anything, so they start to advise people don't really say too much, like when you are, going to put your 2 weeks notice and wait a little bit to know, like, okay, I got my check, I know I'm starting my job next week, and I have enough to get me over till then or something. So, that was something else I saw. And I'm like, wow, jeez. Well, I'm learning a lot from that. If I ever want to go somewhere else, don't put your 2 weeks in, I think I could say that, I had an experience back years ago when I was working on the military base full-time at the other job. And I remember talking about this job a couple of times here on the stream, how they were crooked. And it starts off from the top. If the top is crooked and corrupt, everything else is going to crumble underneath it. And I remember when I wanted to first started to go to school, right, to become a medical assistant, because my sister first went in and she encouraged me. And I said, okay, I'm going to go to school now. So, I was full-time and I was going to school at night before I got fired, back in 2014. And then I started helping my sister out with the kids after that. And she was still going to school. She still had to finish up, and I was taking care of the kids full-time after that. But before that time, I remembered I was going to school for about 4 months before I got fired, and I was going to work full-time. And I was going to school at night. So what happened was I noticed that the bosses started giving me a hard time. They were like trying to demand me to stay past the time I had to go. 8 to 4 was my hours. Back then, and before I went to school, I would work from like 8 to 8 at night. And it was continuous, sometimes to 12 midnight to the into the terminal, because you had to serve the military people there. So that was I was working on there. Like I had 100 hours from that one job. I said, oh my gosh. And I think I saved them. I saved 2 of them. I'm just looking back at it like, geez, I worked my ass off in this place. And, and I was extra. But what happened was when I started putting boundaries down and I had to go to school, I said, I can't do this no more. I have to let them know I'm going to school. When I told them I was going to school, the first thing they did was threaten my hours. They were like, oh, you're going to school? Yeah, I said, yeah, but it's at nighttime, and I said it's, from 6 to 10 at night. So, it's not like it's going to interfere with my hours at work. You know what they said? Well, if you're going to do that, we're going to have to cut your hours. I'm like, did I just hear that right? This lady's going to cut my hours? And so she's like, yeah, we're going to have to cut your hours. So you know what I did? I didn't like say, oh no, I need my money. I just said, I knew that she was being spiteful. And this is the same woman I mentioned that she was spiteful to a lot of the employees. She tried to write false things against the military personnel twice and stuff like that. She did a lot of crooked stuff. So I didn't want to give her the satisfaction. So instead of fighting with her, because I knew that's what she wanted, was to get a reaction out of me, I just said to her, okay, no problem. That's what I said to her. You know what? They never cut my hours. They never cut my hours. What they did was they made a big stink about me that I'm staying overtime. So then she was like, you need to stay. They said, you got to stay for overtime. I said, I can't stay. I told them I got to go to school, to that. And they were used to me being extremely passive. So that was just a big switch for them. So they weren't used to me doing that. Then she's like trying to be funny now, because, I told somebody there, that school's going well and I'm on the dean's list. And, I ain't gonna lie, I'm not trying to brag, but I was a 4.0 student, I got that 4.0 sitting on record. I was a 4.0. When you pay your ass off for school, you're not getting it for free, you better do well. And I studied my ass off that time. I worked my behind off. Even when I came home from school, I got home from school from 10 o'clock. I was 30 minutes away from my house. come back home, and I studied up to midnight and then go to sleep and wake up at 6 in the morning and then go back to work and be there at 8. And then after that, that was my day and that was my life. And I had to do that 4 times a week for those 4 months before I got fired. And then I had to take care of the kids full time during the day and then go to school at night still. So those 4 months were drastic. I was tired and I was loading up on caffeine and coffee and everything. And they knew that. They knew I was working hard. But you know what happened? She got funny about that. So then they were trying to put extra work on me in the midst of the job that I'm trying to do. And I'm like, okay, why are they adding all this work on me? There's all these other people around that can, you know, they're standing around doing nothing and they're asking me to do it. So I ended up getting, bending my back backwards one day because she wanted me to go into the salad bar to lift up the mirrors, you know, like the salad bar mirrors and stuff. And I ended up bending my back the wrong way, trying to get underneath it because I went backwards because she wanted the glass on the top cleaned. So I did that. And the next thing you know is my back turns the wrong way. And then I ended up with a lumbar thoracic injury. And so, you know, it hurt. I was taking muscle relaxants, coming to work and trying to work through that. And then she was like, yeah, I need you to do that again today. I said, I can't do it. I said, I had to report. Why did you report to HR that you got injured? I said, because I was. I said, I literally bent my back. I have x-rays. I went to go get this done at the hospital. And I had to take a muscle relaxant. And then come to work, I can't take muscle relaxants and drive. So, you know, when you go to work, you're feeling that when you're breathing. So I said, no, I got to take it easy. So she was upset. And she went and told somebody I was being difficult and I was being mean. And I was like, no. I said, I was so confused. Like, no, I told her that I had a thoracic injury. I'm trying to take it easy. I told HR about it because you darn right I'm going to report it to HR. I got injured on the job, transfer, and go to another place, right? They gave me such a hard time. That's when they started getting a little shady with me. Because what happened was I asked the person that's part of the company outside, right? The boss that's over them, that's outside of that facility. I called him up. And needless to say, I didn't know that they were friends. I had no idea they were friends. So I'm thinking this boss is over his head. I say, you know what? I don't feel comfortable telling them that I want to leave. I just feel like I don't trust them. I'll let them go through. I see Target is open, so I'm going to come in here first and shop because I just want to look for something for my little nephew, a couple of things. I'll be careful. These people just walk out in front of cars and don't be watching where they go. Ugh. Let this guy out. Probably should I take his parking spot? I should. Let her go. I'm gonna park in here. I'm probably gonna eat last because I want to get to these stores for they close because I know it's New Year's and who's to say they won't close early today. But yeah, so conversation here, blogging here per se. So I go to the higher up that's over him. I had no idea they were all friends talking outside of work. And so I asked him, I said, I'm going to school right now. Right now I'm looking to transfer, right? I asked if I can transfer because I wanted to find a job that has less drama. I didn't tell him that. I just said, like, right now I just would like to transfer. I want to work somewhere where it would work for my hours. And, it's not going to be a problem, because I can't do overtime. And I really would like to transfer because on this job, you can transfer to other facilities. It doesn't have to be on the military base. So I say, I really just want to transfer and it's just something more like set, doesn't have to involve overtime because where I am at now, mission essential, and unfortunately they really need me for these hours after work, so I'm not able to do this. I need to stick with something that's between 8 to 4. I cannot do overtime hours. I'm rushing to work and stuff, rushing to school after trying to do overtime, or I can't do that. I'm paying this much, and I just kept it real. I said, I need a job that's a little bit, more, no overtime requests, works for me. And it's around this area. I wanted something off the military base. And I didn't, and the real truth was because I didn't trust my bosses after seeing how shady they were acting. not towards me, but also towards others. So, you know what happened? He says, okay, I'll look into it. He calls up my boss because they're friends, and he's discussing it with them. So the next day I come in, he's like, Candace, I need to talk to you real quick. And I spoke with him in the back room. He's like, why do you not tell me that you contacted the guy, my boss, over me? I said, well, I contacted him because I'm trying to transfer. And he's like, why do you not tell me that? I could have worked something out for you. But I'm like sitting there like, ooh, you sat there with the other boss, because there's two of them. It was a male and female. And they had some stuff going on that I can't really say too much on here. But the female was sitting right there in front of him and was like, I'm going to cut her hours. I said, well, remember she said that she was going to cut my hours, and she was saying that she's going to have to if I'm going to school. And I mean, I told her it's 8 to 4, so I don't see why not. And not just that, I was told that I have to do overtime, and I had to tell them several times I can't do it. So if it's going to be an issue, then maybe it's best that like I said I must well transfer something, maybe somewhere where they don't need me to be here overtime, because on that job, I was mission essential. That place was open 365 days a year for the military people, But and that's not a problem. But if I tell you I'm going to school and there's all these other employees you can access day overtime, why are you bothering me? So I just told him I can't do somewhere. After that conversation, that's when things started going downhill. And the female boss, right? There's the main boss, and then there's the one under him. So she's under him. She started like acting strange, shady. She was already mad that I reported to HR about the lumbar thoracic injury I had. And then she was mad that I told her I won't do this right now because I'm trying to slow it down. I said I can't be getting injured and things like that. She didn't like that. And then she started doing things like lying, saying there was meetings when there wasn't meetings. And she was pulling the same thing that she did to my brother-in-law and to my other supervisor that used to be there. She did the same thing to them too, and lied and said there's a meeting when there wasn't. And then try to say that they didn't show up for the meeting, they're fired, terminated. So she tried to do that with me. The only difference was I actually showed up there, and then no one was sitting there. I was like, where's everybody at? She told me there's a meeting. She pulls me off of my work because you had 2 hours to get all your work done. She knew that. So what she did was to get me in trouble, to get me looking like I'm lacking in my work, was to stop me from work and say there's a meeting. So I stopped working. She knows I have an hour meeting. Is she pulling the same shit she did to my brother-in-law and to my other supervisor? It used to be here. She did that to my other supervisor. And she was a good supervisor. She had a good reputation, and everyone loved her. And I found out what happened. I said, that's exactly what she did to me, because I met up with the supervisor one day. She told me what happened. I said, she did the same thing to me. And she lied. And she sat here and she walked over the floor after I cleaned it with her feet. And then I went off on her. I can't say anymore what happened, but let's just say it ended off with me getting fired. So, because I wasn't having it anymore with the lies, the deceit, or doing that. So that's when I went full time to watching my sister's kids. And it's funny because I got fired at the same time when my sister needed me to do internship. Isn't that something? See how God works? My sister was worrying. I got fired at the right time to be there for her kids when she had to do internship for 6 weeks to get into medical assistant. And then me, all I had to do was take care of the kids. And of course, at night I still went to school. But the problem was I didn't have work. So I was like, money-wise, I didn't have money. I had to fight for my unemployment. And I had to go through so much in 2014. It was a very stressful year. But God got me through it all. And when she found out that Candace went to school, Candace got internship, Candace graduated, and now she got a job, she failed her manager's test. So someone I know came back and told me, they said, yeah, did you know that after I told her the good news about you, because she was asking about you, I told her everything worked out well, she failed her test and she was stomping out of the hall. I said, wow. Man, you reap what you sow. There you go. That's what I call it. People call it karma. I call it you reap what you sow. You thought that you were going to be shady and keep getting away with this. And she got fired a year later. And a year later, she got fired from her job. I think someone found her out that she was doing shady stuff. And I wasn't like wishing bad on her, because I know that God tells us not to wish bad on people. But I felt like I saw it coming, because I said, you know what? If she keeps getting enough complaints, because when I got fired, I first before I left completely, I went to the HR department again. And the first thing I said to them was everything that's going on between her, the male boss. I said everything that's been what she's been doing to military people. There was also people that had disabilities that was working there, and she was mistreating them and calling them, like being insulting to them, saying things to them, just doing horrible, evil things, lying on people. Lying, it's just bad. So I told them everything, and I said, look, this woman don't belong there. But I feel like you need to investigate. You need to go there and investigate that place, because too many people are just the complaints was just building and building against her. So I went and they said, well, if we want to, what we can do is we can look at our other locations. I said, you know what? I don't even want to work for you guys anymore. That's what I said to them. At this point, I don't even want to work for you guys. That I don't feel comfortable working here anymore. I just want to let you know what's going on. And she says, okay, well, we will investigate it. A year later, she was terminated. I don't know how that happened. I don't know if somebody got involved and was like, you know what, this person here is not going to look into it. Let me look into it. I don't know the whole situation. All I know was that she was gone after that. And I figured that is because of all the things that she was doing on the job. So when people make these videos, I take it serious. I don't think that they're bullshitting. I don't think that they're lying or making up stuff, because I noticed people in the comment sections were saying stuff like that. Oh, well, work harder. That's your problem. Maybe they weren't doing this. And I'm like, first of all, how do you know? Because the truth is that happens a lot more often than what you think. It's a lot of jobs that do that to their employees. There's people that fire them off the spot. Like off the spot, no reason whatsoever. They're not even doing nothing shady. They're not even setting them up. They're just telling you you're terminated. That's it. And you're like, wait, you need to give me a reason. We'll send you a letter. I'm serious. So when people say that, I don't think they're BSing. And then those people in the comment section, there's some of them that seem like they think they know everything. Oh, the problem is you're not working hard enough. No, the problem is you think you know everything. You think you know people's situations, and you don't. Just because you're fortunate to have a job where there's people who are good to you doesn't mean that everybody has that. So, when I listen to those videos, that's what it takes me back to. It brings a lot of memories back to that. But at the end of the day, I'm glad that I did get fired. It was a blessing in disguise, because now I was there for my nephews. It made me work twice as hard in school and got everything I needed. And I moved on to something great, which now, the doctor that I work for now, he's retired now. So now I got to move on to the next thing. So I'm not in a rush, though. I'll tell you that right now. I should have waited to see, and took my time, So what I'm doing next week is I'm just going to go and observe the place. How when you walk in, they do like a, like orientation or something. They let you look in there and see. I just want to see how people are. I want to get a good feel of people. I'm very good with that, like feeling people out without them really doing too much. I'm just observing them a lot. Hi, and also I'll be my normal self. I don't make it obvious. I'm like, hi, how you doing? Hey, good morning. And I'm just gonna walk in and just look around. Look at people and be like, hi, how you doing? And on the side corner, staring at what you're doing and how you act, how you treat people, how you talk to your coworkers. I observe these things, the boss, how much you're going to pay me, what the benefits are, because I'm not rushing into nothing. I'll tell you that right now. I'm not rushing into anything. No, definitely not. Nope. Don't want to do that. Boy. But so heck, I didn't even drink any wine last night. That's how like tired and overwhelmed I was. Like I just came home and I'm gonna wash my hair. I heard the fireworks going off, because at first, I was thinking of sitting outside and having a moment of reflection. But I didn't even want to do that. I said no, I don't want to do that at all. I don't want to do that at all. Ugh. And I'm still trying to think, maybe I'll go to that fish seafood place down the street after this. I don't know. But that's what's on my mind today. What things that I relate to, or what I've been seeing surfacing a little bit on the air, and how a lot of people are so quick to judgment and think that they can speak on that person's situation. Like, who are you? Like, okay, I mean, I get if you have an opinion about something, but to sit back and say that's not the problem. The problem is you need to work hard. Like, how you want to sit here and tell somebody what the problem is directly without even knowing who they are, the situation, or anything? Is it true that there are a lot of people out there that just don't want to work? Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of people out there that are lazy that don't want to work and they get fired. But a lot of times, these people that are on the internet that work hard and they've been doing this for 30 plus years, you think that they just were there for 30 years slacking, and they all say the same story, and they worked hard, and then they just, you're saying that they just got fired all of a sudden 30 years later. Like, I don't know. Like, I don't know. That just doesn't sound right. And it seems like the stories are just becoming like similar, where people are working hard, like bosses and stuff like that. There's a lot of crooked companies out there. A lot of crooked companies. A lot of crooked companies. They say if you can run your own business, they would recommend doing that, because I'm not a business person. Like, I have no understanding of what it's like to run a business. I'm sure it's very stressful, but I wouldn't say that I'm good at doing like leadership roles or like running something like that, a company. I don't think I would do well. I just don't see myself doing that. No. But that's something that I relate to, and I look at that and I see a lot of these videos where people are saying that, and then people saying stuff like, oh, that the problem is you're living out of your means. Oh, the problem is you're not working. Are you like, that's not the problem, because that's not, that you're narrowing it down to one thing, and you think that that's the problem for everything, and that's not. And it's just annoying. We see people are just that narrow-minded and think that they know something. And they'll be probably the same people that got a husband taking care of them, or they got it made in life and they're not really struggling, and they're going to be sitting there looking at somebody else. I'm like, well, the problem is you're not working so hard enough. You're like, well, what do you do with your life? Are you working hard? How many jobs you working? I stay at home. Oh, that's nice. There's nothing wrong with that. But don't sit here and judge another person, and you're not in their situation. You don't work hard like that. So you don't have any experience in that. You haven't had an experience like that that's similar for you to talk about. It's true. I've seen that. My sister said that one time. She brought my nephews to school, because my sister works full time and she had a second job on the side. Plus, my brother-in-law was working full time. So, again, it's never enough. So she's working hard, and people are saying stuff like, oh, how about you come to the parents teachers night, or, when they do it. My sister, I can't, I got to work. I can't do it this day. And somebody said something like, oh, well, I go here at this time. I make time for my kids on this date. I take them here. I could do this during the day. They were saying something. They had time to do this and that. And my sister she looked at her life and says, what's funny is that this person is, she has nannies that takes care of her kids. She doesn't work. She's a stay-at-home mom. She's getting her nails done. And then she goes and has time for her kids after school for these different types of things. I don't have the same time. Now, that is, even with people making big time money, people are struggling. It's like, I'm watching online and I'm like, wow, it makes, I saw some of the comments. I was annoyed. I was like, let me get off of here, because it's annoying seeing that when people think they can speak on something that they had no real experience with, or they haven't had the same similar experience that person had, so they just so quick to just speak on it like they know what happened. It's one thing you say, this is what I believe, this is what I think about a lot of people, working hard enough. But when you sit back and directly say, that's the problem, you're not working hard, it's like you're directly saying, I know your situation, and this is why you're struggling, or why you got fired, or why this and that. It's like, what? Oh boy. Oh gosh. Well, I'm gonna go in. I'm gonna go some shopping. Happy New Year's to everybody. Have a safe 2026. And at first I wanted to have a stream, but I don't know. I'm not in the mood to talk to like a lot of people right now. I don't know. I wasn't really feeling a stream today. I was like trying to get myself into the mood, but I wasn't feeling it. I like having a chat room. I wanted to do more of this, like have a blog, get my thoughts out, things that I've been observing, things that people can listen to and relate to. So God bless. Take care, guys. Happy 2026. Don't drink too much wine or alcohol. I'm only probably going to have one glass of wine, tonight. That's about it, because that's all I can have. But bye-bye.